Welcome into the Fantasy Draft Room. I'm Cody Smith at Cody Smith TFDR on X. And today we're continuing with the NFC North, highlighting the Green Bay Packers today. A very interesting team. We've got a little bit of a historical database on this team, but it changed in the middle of last year in a pretty drastic way. So we'll dig into it now with the offensive historicals, kicking this one right off. Looking at the 3-year average, we do have 4 years of Matt LaFleur and 3 years of Adam Stenavich as the offensive coordinator for this team, but we all know it runs through Matt LaFleur basically at the top, and then with Jordan Love as the quarterback. So for the 3-year average, we're looking at those big six numbers: 541 passing attempts, 474 rushes, 408 of those going to the RB. Over the 3-year average, 94 RB targets, 333 wide receiver targets, and 94 targets to the tight end. If we're looking at the big discrepancies, we do see the biggest thing was from 23 to 24. We dropped from 581 to 479 total passing attempts for the offense. Rushing attempts jumped from 441 to 526. And we do have a little bit of maybe a Malik Willis effect here because he played a couple of games. But I really think that this is a Josh Jacobs effect. And so it's a very large discrepancy upon where you want to put this team in terms of total passing attempts. I don't have them coming close to that 581 number. I have them more so aligned to the 479 number from the 2024 season. So we look at it here, and that is Jordan Love starting off with the passing attempts for him at 496 passing attempts. Again, you can pump this number up. We're going to look at the quarterback ranking overall and positional rankings really quick at positional rank 20. And this is where I have a very hard time with Jordan Love being inside of like the top 15 quarterbacks in terms of dynasty rankings, wherever you want to have him. I am just much lower on him. And it is because of the Josh Jacobs effect. As long as he is healthy, I think this team changed philosophically last year in the middle of the season to be a Josh Jacobs team versus a high passing offense team with Jordan Love. But we'll see how it goes forward within the team for the next couple of years. Looking at Jordan Love and his passing attempts over his first 2 years as a starter: 579 in 2023 over 17 games, and then 425 over 15 games in 2024. I'm personally aligning much more to the 2024 season, which is coming out at 496 attempts. And just to dive into that one a little bit further, if you look at the Jordan Love stats for weeks 1 through 9, whenever he was playing, he missed weeks 2 and 3, I believe. And then he also has a hamstring injury in there somewhere, but he was able to play through that one. He had 34.3 passing attempts per game in weeks 1 through 9 in games that he played. However, whenever we look at weeks 9 through 7 or 11 through 7, they had a week 10 bye, and then weeks 11 through 17, he had 24.8 passing attempts per game. So this is really where the split lies of which one do you believe that they're going to try to run and which style do they want to run in 2025. 2025, 2026 season. I'm aligning more with the fact that they saw what they could do with Josh Jacobs leading this team in the rushing game and saying, hey, the passing attempts are going to come down. We're going to run the ball, and then we're going to be highly efficient on low passing volume through the passing attack offense. I'm aligning more that way. So I have him coming in here at 496 attempts. We can then look at the completion percentage. Jordan Love coming in at 65.12%. The last 2 years that he was actually a starter at 64.2 and 63.1. 65% is honestly higher than either of those 2 years, and hopefully we get a little bit of that out of the addition of finally a first-round wide receiver going to this team in Matthew Golden that for some reason everybody apparently hates, at least in the fantasy community. But for 65.12 completion percentage results in 323 completions. We look at the yards per attempt number coming in at 7.56 now, and yards per attempt for the last 2 years for Jordan Love has been at 7.2 and 8.0, middling those two numbers right in there at 7.5. The 11.61 yards per completion number, also the same thing. He was at 11.2 in his first year as a starter and 12.6 last year. We middled those two numbers out, and we come out to 3,750 passing yards for the Green Bay Packers and 28 touchdowns. 28 touchdowns comes from the fact that a touchdown rate for this team has been pretty high, 5.5% and 5.59 or 5.9% in 2024 for Jordan Love. That's a pretty good touchdown rate. The last 2 years, he's had 32 and 25 touchdowns. So we put that number in at 28 and the 11 interceptions. The rushing floor of Jordan Love really doesn't exist all that much for me personally. Last year, he had 25 rushing attempts in 15 games, albeit in an injured season. So you're not really going to use him as much of a runner there. In 17 games in his 2023 season, he had 50 rushing attempts. So I have him below the 2023 season at 44 rushing attempts for 193 yards on the 4.39 yards per attempt average. If we're looking at the yards per attempt average from the last 2 years, 4.9 and 3.3. I'm not going to fault him for the 3.3 down year season on his injured season, but I'm also not going to put him back up to a 4.9 from the 2023 season either. So we middle that one out at the 4.39 yards per attempt and 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. Again, positional rank quarterback 20, definitely not what I think a lot of people expect from Jordan Love, especially where his like KTC rankings are currently right now. I am a lot lower on him, and I would rather have, like I've been talking about it before, and I would say I would rather have Dak Prescott straight up over Jordan Love, and this is reflective in this positional rank number that I have currently from my projections, but it is really a lot based on which style of the offense do you think that we're going to see in 2025, the second half of last year or the first half of last year. Whenever you have a 10 passing attempt per game difference, a lot of things can change within this offense. I'm just more on the negative side of it, at least for the passing game, but that does, if I'm negative on the passing game, elevate the rushing game. So then we can get in here to the Josh Jacobs line, and we don't really need to talk about any of the other ones here. I've got some of the carries going to Marshawn Lloyd, Chris Brooks, Emmanuel Wilson. I do believe will probably be the RB2 for this team. It could be Marshawn Lloyd as long as he's healthy, but after dealing with everything that he went through last year, I'm going to say that they still rely on Emmanuel Wilson for this team. And the RB rushes last year was 446. I have that number coming down just a little bit to 432. So well within reason, even with almost 300 carries to Josh Jacobs, to still have this many carries. Let's see, that number is 135 total, split between all of the other running backs. So Josh Jacobs is really the only one we need to talk about, though, and I have him at that 297 carries number. And the yards per attempt for Josh Jacobs is currently been at a 4.3 career average. Last year jumped up to a 4.4 with the Green Bay Packers, and I expect that number to stay pretty close to that. I have him almost at a 4.3 at 4.27, giving him 1,268 yards on the ground and 12 rushing touchdowns. Last year he was at 15 rushing touchdowns. I expect that number to come down just a little bit, more passing touchdowns. We take away a little bit there and we give more rushing touchdowns to Josh Jacobs. And then we also have a couple scattered in throughout the other remaining running backs on the team. For the targets, if we're looking at Josh Jacobs, I have 78 total targets to the running back room. Total targets on the running back room last year was 72, so we see a little bit of an increase there. Josh Jacobs himself last year, though, had a total of 43 targets through the air. And so I bumped him up a little bit to 47 total targets and a 76.60 catch percentage. If we're looking at Josh Jacobs for his career average, he's been at 78.5. Last year with the Green Bay Packers was at 83.7. So definitely lower than last year. You could bump this one up a little bit if you wanted to, but I have him coming in here at 36 total receptions, 309 yards on a 8.58 yards per reception number. His yards per reception number last year was 9.5, but his career average is a 7.7. So we middle that one out a little bit, and we get the 8.58 number, 309 yards, and 1 touchdown through the air. Again, Josh Jacobs finally broke the streak after having like 200 total targets through the air. No, not even targets, 200 receptions and never a passing touchdown reception. He finally got his one last year. Hopefully he can keep that up and get one more this year. That results in Josh Jacobs being my RB8 in projections, a very high outcome if they still play this way for the Green Bay Packers in 2025. From there, we can then look at the wide receiver room. The big thing that we're seeing in here is I'm actually putting in Christian Watson as a 0 games played for this year. I don't know if that's going to be fully correct. We'll see more information as we get through camp and as we get closer to the season. But even if he's not playing 0 games, it's probably a significantly reduced number of games, and you still have a Matthew Golden that I do think projects to fill into the Christian Watson role. As long as he translates from the college game to the NFL game, he probably won't have that many targets, as he's then relegated to probably like wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 on this team. So it's a lot of just meh at the wide receiver room. We have Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks. I know a lot of people are really excited about Jaden Reed and what he can do, especially from like a reception perception charting and everything like that. But he's just not used. Like, he's legitimate. He should be used more. I fully agree with that. And I do think he's a very good wide receiver. But this offense, if they are not running out of 11 personnel, which they don't run out of 11 personnel all that much comparatively to the rest of the league, they just don't have Jaden Reed on the field. They just take him out, and he's a slot-only player. The only time he's ever on the field is in 11 personnel. So I have him coming in here with the same number of targets as Romeo Doubs. It's 69 targets to Jayden Reed, 69 targets to Romeo Doubs, 58 targets to Dontayvion Wicks. This even gets murkier if you put Christian Watson back into this offense. It is just a passing attack room that I really would like to avoid at all costs. I do have the first round rookie that most people will not agree with this projection. I can fully take flack on that one, but I'm saying for the first time that you've ever picked a first round wide receiver in like the 22 years of the Green Bay Packers, I'm saying that Matthew Golden is going to lead the team in targets in year one, which is probably a little bit of an outstanding take, but this is just where I'm at. 96 targets, 64 receptions, 778 yards on a 66.67 catch percentage, 12.16 yards to the air, and 12.16 yards per reception, and 6 total touchdowns for a wide receiver 44, which is the highest wide receiver for this team. Again, just an offense that I personally would rather avoid at all costs, even though I have drafted a little bit of Matthew Golden in my rookie drafts. Then we get into Jayden Reed, 69 catches. His catch percentage over the last couple of years has been, or over the last 2 years that he's been in the league, has averaged out at 70.4 for his career. So I have that coming in here below that number. 45 catches for Jayden Reed, 607 yards on 13.49 yards per reception. Looking at his yards per reception number, that's a 12.4, jumped all the way up to 15.6 last year. He's a weird slot receiver that actually plays a lot more downfield on like post routes and stuff like that. So I'm still keeping it high, but not what he put up in 2024. Bring that number down, and we result in that 607 yards to the air, and then the 6 touchdowns. Last year, he had 6 touchdowns as well, and in his rookie year, he had 8 touchdowns. Again, just with the playing time amount, I'm not going to put him any higher than 6. If I wanted to move things around here between the other 3 wide receivers, between Reed, Doubs, and Wicks, I'd probably honestly move them more towards Matthew Golden, as he's going to be the extreme vertical threat. This offense just really wants to excel in a play action, throw the ball extremely far down the field, the explosive plays style of offense. And I do think they'll do it well. I just don't think they'll do it at a high volume. So Romeo Doubs, then we can look at him, 69 catches as well. Both of these two, nice. 69 total targets, or 69 targets, not receptions. But I have him at a 60.87 catch percentage. If we're looking at Doubs over the last couple of years, catch percentage for him has jumbled around between 62, 61, 63%. It would be his lowest that he's posted in his career at 60.87, but we'll see where that one comes out. If you change a number or two, it would probably be right about his career average. At 42 receptions, 12.76 yards per reception, has been a little bit above his career average at 11.6 through the first 3 years. Last year, he jumped all the way up to 13.1, but that's risen each year from 10.1 to 11.4 to 13.1 in 2024. So I have that number coming in at 12.6 and the 4 touchdowns. Dontayvion Wicks being the other guy in this offense that actually has a meaningful workload, and that's 58 targets, 36 catches for 439 yards and 4 touchdowns. Finally, we can get into the tight ends, and we're still seeing a little bit of a split here, probably more than most people are accounting for. I still remember when Luke Musgrave was by far and away the tight end one for this team, and then he got hurt last year, and then Tucker Kraft took over, and now we're vaulting Tucker Kraft up to where he's like a tight end 7 or a top 10 tight end at minimum in KTC rankings and in Dynasty rankings overall. I don't have the outcome for that anywhere close to that, but again, just because of the total number of passing attempts for the offense and a little bit of Luke Musgrave cutting into him. So for Tucker Kraft, he's the one we'll actually dive into and talk about. 67 targets over the course of 17 games. Last year, he put up 70 targets, but again, if you put Luke Musgrave back into the offense, I expect that number to come down a little bit as long as Musgrave is healthy. Not too much of a fall, though. 67 total targets at a 73.13 catch percentage. Last year, that number was at 71.4, and his rookie year was 77.5 on 40 targets and 31 receptions. So that number comes in with 49 receptions, the 12.53 yards per reception. If we're looking at that, that number jumped up all the way to 14.1 last year. A big body yards after the catch type of tight end who's really going to excel in a yards per reception category. I do have the number coming down, though, because a 14.1 is wild for a tight end number. I have it dropping down to 12.53, giving him 614 yards through the air and 5 total touchdowns. Last year, that number was at 7. Again, you put in a Luke Musgrave and you lower the total passing attempts of the offense. I have that number coming down to 5. Luke Musgrave then coming in at tight end 48, Tucker Kraft coming in at tight end 16. Luke Musgrave, 26 targets, 18 catches for a 69.23 reception rate, 184 yards in the air, and 1 touchdown. That's going to be it for the Green Bay Packers. I think everything on this team is actually really just driven by this total number of passing attempts. Where do you think this offense operates? I'm on the lower side of passing and higher on the rushing side, but I know people will say you had the injuries of last year. You had Malik Willis a little bit of season. I'm removing the Malik Willis games. Like I'm not putting those into my projections. I'm not using them for the overall averages of numbers over the last 2 years of Jordan Love's career. I just think this offense philosophically, as long as Josh Jacobs is healthy, is going to run through him. But I can definitely be wrong on that, and I will fully admit to having a large amount of variance within this offense. However, at least for the wide receivers, I think they're still going to be incredibly murky, and I don't think we have anything, unless it's a very high touchdown variance that correlates to just one of the wide receivers specifically. I don't think that any of them really have an opportunity to be like a top 24, maybe even top 36 wide receiver here, as I don't have anybody inside of my top 42, and the highest one is Matthew Golden, the rookie, at wide receiver 48 in the positional rankings from projections. So that's going to be it for the Green Bay Packers. Yell at me if you want. I can fully take the heat on this one, but we can recap now. 496 passing attempts for 323 completions, 3,750 yards in the air for 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, 490 total rushing attempts for 2,193 yards and 18 rushing touchdowns on the ground. That gives them 986 total plays and 46 total touchdowns. One of the teams that I'm just not as high on as the rest of the community, but again, I can fully take it. If you want to yell at me, do it in the comments below. If you want access to the sheet, it is in the description. Just click the link, request access, and it's completely free. I will give it over to y'all. Thank you for tapping in, and we will continue with the NFC North tomorrow.